The October 22nd, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting to order. If you're able, please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. May we have roll call?
Thank you. Commissioner Woodard,
Here?
Commissioner Reveal,
Here.
Commissioner Petty,
Here?
Vice Chair Ursley,
Present.
Commissioner Kraus,
Present.
Commissioner Fikes.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Commissioner Petty?
I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Would the clerk please read the consent agenda items into the record?
Thank you. Approval of the regular meeting of September 10th, 2025, and that is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on the consent agenda items just read by the clerk? Nobody online?
Nobody online.
Are there any objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Hearing no objections, the agenda and consent agenda are approved. So moving on to here. Do we have any scheduled public comment? Unscheduled public comment?
There's nobody online.
Moving on to item E, consideration of plats. The first preliminary plat before us tonight is Resolution PZ 2025-31, recommending approval of preliminary plat Shoreline Heights 2025 vacation to vacate a pedestrian easement on Lot 48, Shoreline Heights 2023, addition to the Kenai Peninsula Borough in the Rural Residential Zoning District. Is there a motion to approve Resolution PZ 2025-31? Commissioner Petty?
I would like to make a motion to approve Resolution PZ 2025-31 as presented.
Second. I'll second.
Director Buettner, can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you. I almost pushed the wrong button. So, Resolution PZ 2025-31 is proposing a preliminary plat to vacate a pedestrian easement and vacate a utility easement. The city received a preliminary plat from McLean Consulting Incorporated on behalf of the property owner for the vacation of a 20-foot pedestrian easement located along the northern boundary of Lot 48, Shoreline Heights 2023 edition. The dedication of Pay Drive on the Shoreline Heights 2023 edition plat filed at 2024-83 Kenai Recording District effectively severed the pedestrian easement, rendering the eastern portion of the pedestrian easement found on subject Lot 48 unnecessary for the original intended use of access to commercial fishing beach sites. Kenai Municipal Code, Chapter 1410 Subdivision Regulations states preliminary plats or replats must be first submitted to the city for review to provide recommendation to the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission. The proposed vacation plat meets the preliminary plat requirements and development requirements for the rural residential zoning district. Access to the subject lot is via Pay Drive, which is city-maintained paved road. At approximately 24,437 square feet, Lot 48 exceeds the rural residential minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. City water is available along Pay Drive. City sewer is unavailable in this area, therefore the property owner will need to install a private on-site septic system. The septic system must meet the requirements, the regulatory requirements of the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. The Public Works Director, Fire Marshal, and Building Official have reviewed the preliminary plat and have no comments. Staff finds the preliminary plat meets the following Title 14 sections of Kenai Municipal Code and aligns with the intent of the Kenai zoning code. Pursuant to KMC 1410-070 subdivision design standards, the preliminary plat for replat, subject to the listed conditions, provides utilities, access, easements, provides a satisfactory and desirable building site, and the accessible water system is subject to the regulatory requirements of the City of Kenai Public Works Department. The on-site wastewater system is subject to the regulatory requirements of ADEC. Easy for me to say. Pursuant to KMC 1410-080, minimum improvement required, the preliminary plat is within a subdivision that has dedicated rights-of-way and determine acceptable access subject to the listed conditions. Therefore, an installation agreement is not required. Pursuant to KMC 1424-010, minimum lot requirements, the preliminary plat meets the city standards, being over 20,000 square feet. Pursuant to KMC 1424-020, general requirements, preliminary plat meets city standards for minimum lot width and depth and access and utility easements. Compliance with the maximum lot coverage, maximum height, and setbacks will be reviewed during building permit review. Staff finds that the proposed preliminary plat for Shoreline Heights 2025 vacation to vacate a 20-foot pedestrian easement on Lot 48, Shoreline Heights 2023 edition, meets the general standards for KMC Chapter 1410 subdivision regulations and Chapter 1424 development requirements table, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of resolution number PZ 2025-31 to the Kenai Peninsula Borough, subject to the following conditions. 1, further development of the property will conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. And 2, that the Kenai City Council must declare the 20-foot pedestrian easement right-of-way not needed for a public purpose and approve the vacation of the right-of-way as shown on the preliminary plat.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak?
There is nobody online.
We'll bring this back to the commission for discussion.
Through the chair, I had a question on the easement. If it's beach access, it's not really on the beach side, it's on the other side of the road.
Thank you, Commissioner Fikes. At the beginning, we said that when Pay Drive was dedicated, this is the northernmost lot on the east side of Pay Drive. When Pay Drive went in and was dedicated, that's what severed the pedestrian access. So that's why we were suggesting that the east side be vacated. We're not touching the west side, and there'll remain access at this time.
That was my next question. So if we're terminating the public easement access, we're offering an alternative on the west side?
The west side will retain what they already have. It's already been dedicated. The pedestrian easement's already there on the west side. And since Pay Drive's a public road, access to that access is still all on public land. So this is duplicative access and actually terminates into a private property to the east. So there's no access to the east. So it actually just puts somebody on private property. So there's no logical termini on the east side.
Thank you. I just want to clarify because it's a big deal when you start terminating public access. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Commissioner Petty.
So help me understand, our recommendation here, we'll send it to the borough, and then the borough will bring it back. Will it come before us again, or will it go straight to the city council? What's that protocol?
For vacation of right-of-way, they take our recommendation like they do for any other preliminary plat. If the borough does approve or recommend approval of that plat at their meeting, their plat committee meeting, it automatically comes back to city council because city council is the only body that's allowed to either vacate right away or choose not to. And they do have a clock, so after that meeting, council has 30 days to take action. Per borough code, no action is consent. But generally, because we have 2 meetings a month at council, we get it back to them in plenty of time for them to take appropriate action and either confirm or veto the vacation at that time. So we'll not come back to this body, but they do take your recommendation into account at both steps at the borough and back at council.
Is this public access existing on any other lots above or below this that we should be addressing at the same time, like we should have addressed this one when we vacated the last one?
No, this one is, it does exist on the western parcel that's across the street on Pay Drive, and we're not touching that one because there is beach access potentially right there to the commercial fishing sites. So in your packet, it looks sideways, so the easement is on the north side of the highlighted parcel.
Easement that he's talking about, it does extend down here?
Yes, there's a pedestrian easement. It's not developed.
Oh, but people can access it from here, is what you're saying, there's no other access point to
They-
that easement?
They can access from Pay Drive, which is a public road.
Thank you.
One more question for staff through the chair. Just because we did our bluff stabilization, this in no way impacts any access that the city would be needing.
No, this is far to the north. The access here is, there are some tideland shore fishery lease areas immediately to the west of this area. And that's what it's retaining access to. It's not generally while it is public, it's not generally a normal access point. Most people would access the beach from North Beach, which is south here, but this is far removed and kind of out and around the point from the bluff stabilization project.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Reveal,
Yes.
Commissioner Petty,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ursley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kraus,
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard.
Yes.
There are 6 yes votes. Resolution 2025-31 is approved.
The second preliminary plat before us tonight is Resolution PZ 2025-32, recommending approval of preliminary plat Shoreline Heights 2025 replat to replat on lots 19 and 20 Shoreline Heights 2014, addition Phase 1 in the Rural Residential Zoning District. Is there a motion to approve Resolution PZ 2025-32? Commissioner Woodard.
I move to approve Resolution PZ 2025-32, recommending approval of the preliminary plat, Shoreline Heights.
I'll second that.
Director Buechner, can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair Ursley. Preliminary plat has been submitted from McLean Consulting. on behalf of the property owner for a replat of Lot 19 and Lot 20, Shoreline Heights 2014 Edition Phase 1, to merge the two lots into a single approximately 1.919 acre parcel. Lot 20 improvements include a single-family dwelling, driveway with a paved parking area, and on-site septic system. Lot 19 is currently vacant. The proposed replat meets the minimum size requirement of 20,000 square feet, or approximately 0.46 acres, for the rural residential zoning district. The lot size of proposed Lot 20A is approximately 83,592 square feet, or 1.919 acres. City water is available along Pay Drive and has been installed on Lot 20. City wastewater is not available along Pay Drive, therefore, private septic system has been installed on Lot 20. The private septic system is subject to the regulatory requirements of the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, ADEC. Access to the proposed lot is provided via Pay Drive, a city-maintained paved road. A 10-foot easement for utilities is located along the eastern boundary of the proposed lot adjacent to Pay Drive, as denoted in Plat Note 3, which states that the front 10 feet adjacent to rights-of-way is a utility easement. Staff finds that the preliminary plat for subdivision of Lot 19 and Lot 20, Shoreline Heights 2014 Edition Phase 1, meets the following Title 14 of Kenai Municipal Code sections and aligns with the intent of the Kenai Zoning Code. Pursuant to KMC 14.10.070 subdivision design standards, the preliminary plat for subdivision, subject to the listed conditions, provides utility access easements, provides satisfactory and desirable building sites. The city water is subject to regulatory requirements of the City of Kenai Public Works Department, and on-site wastewater systems are subject to DEC requirements. Pursuant to KMC 14.10.080, minimum improvement required, Pay Drive is an existing dedicated right-of-way and is determined acceptable access. Therefore, an installation agreement is not required. Pursuant to KMC 14.24.010, the preliminary plat meets the city standards of minimum lot size in the rural residential zoning district of 20,000 square feet, with a proposed size of 83,592 square feet. Pursuant to KMC 14.24.020, preliminary plat meets city standards for minimum lot width and depth and access utility easements. Compliance with the maximum lot coverage, maximum height, and setbacks will be reviewed during the building permit review. Staff finds that the proposed preliminary plat for Shoreline Heights 2025 replat meets the general standards of Kenai Municipal Code, Chapter 14.10 subdivision regulations, and Chapter 14.24 development requirements table, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of resolution number PZ 202532 for a replat of Lot 19 and Lot 20, Shoreline Heights 2014 Edition Phase 1 to the Kenai Peninsula Borough, subject to the following conditions: that further development of the property will conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations.
Is there any remote attendees wishing to speak?
There are not.
We'll bring this back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Fikes.
I had a question through the chair for staff. So if a resident decides to do such a replat like this to take it from two lots to one, is that any kind of advantageous tax-wise to the city? Does it make any kind of difference? I was just curious.
Any impact would be negligible at best, most, especially with one being undeveloped. Due to the size of the lots, especially in a residential area on this scale, it would not be impactful. It may change a few dollars either way on the assessed value, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make a tremendous difference on the budget.
Yeah, I was just curious because that's kind of leading towards the rezoning and stuff, so that's why I was curious as we get more into land use discussions and talks of rezoning. And then just, again, general curiosity, so as these places develop and they've got some access, but not all access to city services, is that offered at a reduced rate, or do they pay the same as anybody else?
To my knowledge, they're only paying the water rate. We do have a water rate and a sewer rate. It's generally more advantageous to have both, just so you have a place for the water to go once it becomes wastewater. Keeps our utilities balanced and, for the use that is given to them. But in the case of this subdivision, the powers that be back when it got subdivided, decided at this time it wouldn't pencil out to have the sewer main pulled all the way up there. There are there's a subdivision to the east side on the other side of the highway. And potentially, I could see in the future, as future development in the city happens, sewer may end up also coming up this general direction. So at the time, I think it was just more the water quality issue, so they wanted to get on water system sooner. The lots were big enough, because it's rural residential, that they could have septic. But as things mature, as the city grows, I could see that sewer eventually would be brought in, and then at that point, the septic systems would be generally abandoned in place.
Great, thank you.
If there's no other comments, I'd like to request unanimous consent.
Are there any objections?
No objection, but I do have one more question through the chair. So again, when residents choose to go from 2 dedicated lots to 1, what are the determining factors for what the actual physical registered address will be?
Typically, if they are already developed, it will be the one that has the structure. So in this case, Lot 20 is developed, so they'll retain the address on Lot 20, and we would ask that the one on Lot 19 be eliminated. If they're doing this before they develop, we look for the context of the neighborhood, and we find the appropriate number that would allow for, if there's going to be development on either side. For instance, if you're mid-block, so to speak, I wouldn't suggest having an address that's like ends in 80 or 90, because you're really restricting what the next ones could be, given the context of the neighborhood. But in this case, since Lot 20 we would just keep that one, because that's what their house already is addressed. And it just, merging a lot like this and anywhere in the city really just allows for future development. If they wanted to put in, let's say, a greenhouse or a shop or something like that, they don't have to worry about lot lines and setbacks, because now they have one bigger lot that they can utilize.
Right, and moving down that same train of thought, so if they decide to put an ADU, where does that lie again with the house numbers? Delivery people like to know.
Generally, if it is going to be on the same lot, if it were to be an accessory dwelling unit, it would likely get a letter as a suffix. So in this case, I believe 1437 is Lot 20. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. If they were to put an ADU on this lot, it would be 1437 Alpha would be our recommendation. That way, it shows it's on the same parcel, but it's also a separate structure and or mailbox.
Yeah, and again, this is all just information. There's trending towards development and stuff, and so you're seeing ADUs, you're seeing garages, and so then you're seeing a studio or apartment above the garage, so, and then I would assume whatever the city chooses and recommends is forwarded onto the borough for recording for the plat.
Yes, for the plat is separate from addressing, but the city does control addressing within city limits. So our department, the planning and zoning department, does put it in, puts it directly into the viewer. They actually have a tool built in that the city can access, suggest the address, and it also does allow for a suffix. So it could be, I've seen it, not here in Kenai, but I've seen it where it's like 1437 and a half. We probably would prefer just letters, just to make it a little bit easier, a little nicer to read and write. But when we look through Title 14, that may be something we suggest an update, because numbering is based on the street system, so direction from our north and south and east and west, but it doesn't really address multiple units very well. So it may be a clarification we want to seek, but right now we do have protocols to keep them in order.
I appreciate that, and it's not just delivery, it's even emergency services, and not to take up too much more time, but since you're right on that topic, again, if it's a corner house, I've noticed that, as well as emergency services, when you're on that corner lot and you have 2 driveways, what's your house number?
We generally work with the developer and or with the actual property owner, and we generally we don't allow double frontage. it does occasionally happen. So we ask them what is their primary access, even if they have a secondary to, like, say, their shop. If there is no one dwelling in that shop, it's not like a studio apartment, like you said, it's just one primary residence, whichever one, generally it's whichever street the dwelling actually fronts onto. So if it is a corner lot and they kind of have a secondary driveway onto that secondary street, if it's facing north, it'll be on whatever street is right in front of it, whatever is in front of the front door, essentially.
Awesome, thank you.
Commissioner Petty.
Yes, on the previous discussion that was just had, there was an acronym that I was out in left field with.
I'm sorry, ADU, you were asking what it meant.
ADU, I don't know what that means. If you'd be so kind to clarify that, please.
Yeah, a ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, so everyone has at least a primary structure on the property, and then this would just be subservient to that. So it would not be, it could look like a standalone house, but it is not the main dwelling or the first dwelling on that property.
And so that,
Accessory dwelling unit.
Unanimous consent was requested by Commissioner Petty. Are there any objections? Hearing no objections to unanimous consent, PZ Resolution 2025-32 is approved. Agenda item F, public hearings, resolution PZ 2025-29, recommending the Kenai City Council amend the official zoning map to rezoning 7 lots and 1 tract to urban residential and 2 tracts to suburban residential. Is there a motion to approve resolution PZ 2025-29? Commissioner Woodard.
I move to approve Resolution PZ 2025-29, recommending the Kenai City Council amend the official zoning map by rezoning 7 lots and 1 tract to urban residential and 2 tracts to suburban residential.
I'll second that.
Director Buettner, can we have your staff report, please?
Yes. Thank you, Vice Chair Ersley. The applicants are seeking to rezone 10 total parcels or properties along the north side of Redoubt Avenue as shown in the table above. Currently, zones include rural residential and suburban residential. The purpose of the rezone is to allow higher density residential development that mirrors current development patterns and to eliminate duplicative conditional use permits along a corridor with similar development patterns. Pursuant to KMC Section 14.20.270, the initiation of a zoning map amendment may be initiated through petition by a majority of the property owners in the area to be rezoned. As of the date of this report, the city has received an application from Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiative, or KPHI, and support emails and documentation from the Kenaitze Indian Tribe and Alex Douthit. The city administration believes it is in the city's best interest to also rezone the city-owned 60-plus acre tract to allow potential future development similar to neighboring subdivisions. The existing zoning on the parcels is residential in nature, but does not generally allow for the type of higher density development preferred in this area of the city per the comprehensive plan. Findings. The Redoubt Avenue corridor, according to the land use plan, is designated to be developed as suburban residential. Per the comprehensive plan, suburban residential land uses are described as typically single-family and multifamily residential units that are urban or suburban in character. Typically, suburban residential neighborhoods are developed at a higher density, lots are typically smaller, and public water and sewer systems are required or planned. This does not include the 160-acre tract owned by the Kenaitze Indian Tribe, which is classified as low-density residential, largely due to the proximity to the Kenai Municipal Airport and being located near some of the approaches to the floodplain basin. The rezone on this parcel is to allow for flexibility for development as Kenize develops their parcel. City utilities are either present or planned along this corridor throughout the entire length. Areas to the west of the proposed rezoning area and directly along Redoubt Avenue are primarily multifamily residential in nature with single-family housing behind. Due to the smaller lot size, lot coverage may preclude potential development. A rezone to urban residential allows for up to 40% lot coverage, which may allow for additional multifamily units to be developed in the future. Additionally, a rezone to urban residential will eliminate the need for conditional use permits for the multifamily developments built for and operated by KPHI. The city recognizes through a series of conditional land donations that senior and low-income and affordable housing is needed in the city, and adding an administrative burden to a residential use that cannot be changed for 30 years as restricted by the initial grant funding source is not in the best interest of the city. In the Imagine Kenai 2030 comprehensive plan, there are several goals and objectives that are met with this rezoning request. Goal 1, Objective 4, promote the siting and design of land uses that are in harmony and scale with surrounding uses. Goal 1, Objective 8, collaborate with local Alaska Native organizations to identify culturally sensitive issues and areas of importance in Kenai. Goal 1, Objective 10, continue to support existing senior services and the development of additional services and housing. Goal 3, Objective 2, promote the infill of existing improved subdivision lots. And Goal 3, Objective 3, review existing zoning and subdivision codes to determine if they address current and future land uses adequately. The Planning Department has found that rezoning the Redoubt Avenue corridor will enhance the developability of the corridor by having consistent zoning throughout the neighborhoods. Consistency of zoning demonstrates to developers, large and small, that the city is intentional about future development and creates the best and highest use of land without disturbing existing landowners with incompatible land uses. The developer of denser multifamily residential uses along the minor collector route, Redoubt Avenue, with single-family or less dense multifamily housing further removed from the road, will offer a development pattern that benefits all residents of the city by reducing road noise and from disturbing the neighborhood. It also allows for the continued expansion and improvement of the city utility system. Lastly, the rezone allows for a variety of housing choices for residents, which offers a more vibrant neighborhood experience. Pursuant to Kenai Municipal Code 14.20.280, notices of the public hearing for the rezone were mailed to property owners within a 300-foot periphery of the subject properties. This mailing was in the form of a letter which allowed for more robust information to be shared up front, including a map showing the affected parcels and tract. City staff published notice of the public hearing in the Peninsula Clarion, and notification was posted. Public inquiries were received seeking additional information. There have been no objections received either verbally or written at the time of this report. And on page 28, if you are following along, does have a couple of maps that I built in to kind of show what is changing. But based on the findings and analysis of the staff report, staff recommends the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the rezone request for the 7 lots and 1 tract to urban residential and 2 tracts to suburban residential as listed above. Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations will be forwarded to City Council for consideration. And a summary of the map for anyone following along online. The top map has the current zoning, which has the Mommsen subdivisions to the left, just south of the Wildwood Prison. Then there's a large rural residential chunk right in between that kind of looks like a inverted L, almost like a number 7. Then there's Inlet Woods, but there's a large 10-acre homestead kind of right in between that hasn't been developed. And then to the east of Inlet Woods is all rural residential. The proposed rezone would extend the urban residential east of 4th Street over to what will be Nightingale Street, just past 6th Street. Nightingale is not improved, but it's platted. It's immediately west of Schuyler, which leads into the western part of Inlet Woods. It's an unimproved right-of-way, but Nightingale is what it's called. Then it would leave the area around Schuyler alone. It would rezone the homestead to suburban residential, which does not, none of this compels development. It just allows for more dense development should they want to, but it sets a floor, not a ceiling. So, and then to the east, Kenai's 168 per parcel would be urban residential. So the reason the city finds it in the best interest for the city-owned land, which is that massive parcel kind of the southeast of the prison, it would allow for, should a developer want to put more units in, because our minimum lot size in rural residential, which is currently zoned, would allow for about half-acre parcels. They would have to be 0.46 acres to meet the minimum lot size in the rural residential, which means you could not put as many houses, should you want to. If we wanted to mimic the subdivisions, either like Momsen's, which are about 0.2 acres, or Inlet Woods, which is a little bit newer, and they're closer to about a third of an acre, rezoning suburban residential would allow that type of development, but right now, as it stands, they would not be allowed to have smaller lots. And especially in a place where we have water and sewer, it's more beneficial to us to have more customers on the line. Not necessarily for, because we charge a fee, but because the more people that you tap into the system, you kind of spread that maintenance cost around, to a greater extent. But let's say a developer wants to go in there and carve it up into 1 acre lots and put, really big houses there, they still could do that. We're not saying they can't. We're just giving them more options, on the smaller end. A long readout, like I said, east of 4th to Nightingale. Most of that is owned by KPHI. They're putting in the low income and the senior housing. Because of the size of the complexes, they're over 4plexes. They're required to have conditional use permits for each and every individual parcel. They, per their grant agreement, they are not allowed to sell it. It has to remain senior housing or low income, depending on which one, for a period of about 30 years. Even if they were to sell it, those restrictions stay in place for their the next owner. So for 30 years, we'd be doing conditional use permit reports every year when nothing is changing. So we find that it's a burden on them, and then we get the pleasure of reading them, and nothing changes. We don't think that there's really any good advantage to that. And then just to keep it a cohesive one, there are 3 parcels in between where KPHI owns, and the ones that are already urban residential. 1 is privately owned, and 2 are held by the borough. Everyone got noticed. Generally, from my experience, the borough does not, as they're not the ones developing them, they don't take a stance either way. The one in the middle is owned by Alex Douthit, and he's putting a 4plex there. It wouldn't necessarily require urban residential, but it's more for the cohesiveness of the corridor. So he was okay with going to urban residential. Canisius is a little bit different, but more because of the plans they have for that parcel are to put generally 4plexes, but they could allow for higher, 5 more units in a building. It also would allow for professional offices. So if they were to, in the future, I haven't heard any plans yet, but if they wanted to put, like, let's say a small community center for tribe members, or they wanted to move like their tribal council meetings or something into a building there, professional offices are allowed in urban residential. This development is going to be more in the interior. So their initial development with some of the elder housing that we've seen come through our building department is starting across from Walnut Avenue. It'll be on their land on a private road, but it's not right on Redoubt Avenue, it's further in. So it'll kind of, this just allows them to do more with their land. Still gives us, some control with zoning. We can work with them to, if they needed any kind of conditional use or something in the future. But for right now, it allows them to do most of what they planned with that land without a lot of restrictions.
Are there any remote attendees wishing to speak?
No, there's nobody online.
Seeing no one else wishing to speak, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Fikes.
I just had a question through the chair to staff. So if we make this adjustment to change it, does that have any kind of impact on somebody who's looking at financing that might want a rural residential? I know that's kind of a low-income type deal for some residents, so are we eliminating opportunities?
No, so this would not impact, let's say, like the rural development through USDA. There's some loan programs, FHA or VA can also. Those decisions are not based necessarily, they're based, those programs are based more on the fact that we're outside of a metropolitan area of 150,000 people or more is the general federal definition. It's also, these are in a, when we're looking at census tract, more financially distressed. So those, for those loan programs, that's what they're looking for. Our zoning really does not preclude where they buy the house. They could buy it suburban residential, rural residential. It doesn't impact them. And it also does not, the zoning itself does not impact like an assessed value or anything like that. That is more based on the type of development on the size parcel as the borough calculates it.
Okay, and also along those same lines of development, when we're talking suburban, are we looking at sidewalks and gutters now?
The city's developing some road standard guides. Generally, we do not require sidewalks outside of, I think it's collector routes. I will double check that. But, so places like Forest, potentially along Redoubt itself, may require, if not curbs and gutters right now, at least more pedestrian access. So pathways, and there is one along Redoubt. Generally, we're not going to require that outside of like the city core when it comes to like curbs, gutters, sidewalks. But generally, as you get more dense, we do look at some sort of pedestrian accommodation. The Public Works Department is working to put a road design standard guide together. So that should be going to council here soon. Right now, it's just pretty much focused on our most major roads that we have curb, gutter, sidewalks, and separation.
Great, thank you.
What's the main differences between the RS zoning and the RR zoning?
Difference between RS and RR, mostly it's the same amount of lot coverage, but 30%, but it allows for smaller lots. So the minimum lot size is 7,200 square feet, or about 0.17 acres, which is closer to what you see over in the Momsen subdivision off First and Second, is that's kind of our bare minimum. That's RS. RR, the minimum one is 20,000 square feet, which is almost a half acre.
Currently, this lot is RR.
Yes,
I want to make it RS,
correct.
because it says RR on it right now, so it's confusing me. I'm trying to.
We did an overlay, so it's showing what used to be there. That large tract, it's tract A1, Kenai, that's the city-owned parcel.
So essentially, the city, this is the problem that.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
My concern is the city sells this, or even with this Kenites one, these are really big tracts to rezone to say you could have a 10-plex in there. So if this is all zoned to say, hey, you could have a 10-plex in there before they've even subdivided it, how do we know? I mean, that just brings up a lot of concerns. I think that's 160 acres.
So we still, since everything here is still within the city, our building official still reviews building by building. So it can't be just developed willy-nilly, so to speak. Sorry to use an untechnical term, but.
I appreciate that.
But what this rezone will allow is, if we do decide to sell that large parcel or even subdivide that large tract.
This one over here.
The blue, yes,
Yeah.
the city-owned one, not Kenites. If we were to subdivide that, let's say a developer comes in and says, we want 20 acres. This allows them, if they want, to have their development pattern be smaller if they want, but it does not tell them they have to, the lot sizes. Rural residential can allow up to a fourplex without a conditional use permit currently. I believe suburban residential allows you to have 5, possibly 6 units. The problem or not a problem, a challenge you have when you start putting in 5 or 6 units is now you need fire suppression, which means you have to have city utilities. But again, they're not required to, they're just allowed to do more. So this one allows a developer to pencil in smaller lots and see if that would pencil out to make them a profit if they do want to develop. And again, it kind of fits more into the context of if we required half-acre parcels along this, which is what we currently, as we subdivide, as it stands now, they would have to be 0.46 acres, which is bigger than any lot on either side. So this is kind of keeping the context of that whole area roughly the same, but we're not, like I said, we're setting a floor, we're not setting the ceiling for developers.
Through the chair, I think a similar question or a thought I had was the comp plan. So as a generalization, looking at the neighborhood, and like you say, you take a large chunk of land like that and anticipate what your desires may be down the road, and all of a sudden you've got housing initiatives for low income and seniors, and then a developer comes in and that one's got a fourplex and this one's got a 10-plex. All of a sudden, this neighborhood that had just single-family residential houses all of a sudden is now a cluster. And so in my humble opinion, what are we doing as a city to craft that with some foresight into it? You know, not just so it's just nothing but concrete and up and down. And again, you're looking at transportation, you're looking at condensed housing, you're looking at snow removal. And so, yeah, as we say we want to do this or that, I'm just curious as we're shifting away from single-family residences, it seems like.
Not necessarily. Suburban can be single family. They're just on, like I said, smaller lots you get more in. Part of that is due to the utilities being there, you know, spreading that maintenance burden on more users is generally more advantageous. As people come in and want to subdivide, we will still have the say, this commission will still have the say of, you know, where do roads go? Because they're going to have to be newly dedicated. How do these lots look? Are they too small? On the very front, the urban residential, they can have all the way from single family and urban residential. You can still have that. It just allows for more dense use. And when you're closer to a busier road, a lot of people, myself included, if I was building a house, I wouldn't build it on a busier road, you know, with people driving by, blaring their music in the summer. If I'm further away from that major road, it's generally quieter, and that's where you get that more, I'm not gonna say rural, but more rural aspect where you know, just a quiet city street. We still, with the comprehensive plan, this whole area, with the exception of Kenites, was already, the land use, not the zone, was to be suburban residential to, like I said, mirror that development in the back. So someone could come in and put in Inlet Woods 2 or something that looks just like it, you know, the same kind of street network, the same kind of development pattern. So we're not necessarily saying you can't have single family, and I believe the market's strong for single family, but this also allows for duplexes, townhomes, because there may be people in town. It's the variability as well as the availability that makes the housing market, you know, strong. So there may be people like, let's say, teachers or professionals that aren't married. You know, they don't necessarily need a 2,000 square foot house. They would be just fine in a duplex or in a townhome. It's setting the stage so that if developers tap into that market and say, yes, we want some variability, this gives us the flexibility, but again, does not force them in one direction or the other. If they want single family detached all back there and they can make it pencil out for a development, you know, and it's, you know, the city does ultimately sell, or any of these other lots ultimately sell, they can still do all that. We're just allowing slightly greater flexibility. And then the reason we suggest Kenites to be urban residential, I don't foresee skyscrapers or anything crazy going on in there. And plus they're close to the airport, they can't go that tall anyways. But it does allow them the greatest amount of flexibility within their large parcel, because they have a vision for their tribal land. They're not subdividing that into parcels to sell off. They're going to keep that, you know, internal to them at this point. And this just allows them the greatest flexibility without us kind of saying, no, you can't do that, or you need a conditional use permit. But it still has guardrails. So urban residential doesn't allow all the uses, but it allows the greatest flexibility for residential uses with some uses that are compatible, that may be somewhat commercial in nature, like professional offices, but, you know, does not allow, let's say, industry or something like that. So there's still protections for all the surrounding neighborhoods, but it's also kind of letting them do what they want within those confines.
Yeah, I just know there's a new development on Second Street now called COA, I think. and it seems like you could barely turn around. And so as we develop and see these pockets of development of one or two houses crammed in there, it's changing the whole landscape of this particular neighborhood. And so I just wanted to know if we were considering that as we move forward. And it sounds like we are. I just want to know that we're having the conversation as we see other towns and other areas have experienced growth. We're at the threshold of the doorstep, if you will, that we can look into that and maybe make some of these decisions. So we're not just going, oh my God, did anybody think about that when they did that? You know? But
I totally agree, and we are having those conversations. And what we're looking at internally, the administrative, or at least my department, is if we're in a neighborhood or if we're in areas where there are utilities, where generally lots are typically smaller, so kind of that, I'll say forest to evergreen, that area, where you're seeing some of those new developments go in. A lot of that's infill. It may have been a 2.5 or so acre parcel. Sorry, Glenn, I'll get there. Where what wasn't developed finally does get developed. Water and sewer's been there. You know, I think Koa Circle, which is 4th and what is now Koa Circle near Gill, water and sewer's been there for decades. It's been subdivided, I think, for almost 40 years. They finally just now built it. They finally penciled out where those houses could go in, and it makes sense to do it. As we're looking through the town, if there's utilities available, especially, I'll call it the core. So basically, East Evergreen, south of Redoubt, pretty much out to, we'll just say, the schools, maybe just a little past the schools, where our water and wastewater are, it behooves us to be a little more dense in that area. We're not saying they can't have bigger lots, or they can't. We've had places where they've merged and make bigger lots through this commission. But it also allows that flexibility to have more houses where we think it makes sense, because now we're not running new water and sewer lines at the cost of millions of dollars to our taxpayers. But we have plenty of land to the east. So places like Wortham, most of Beaver Loop, especially on the east side, Phillips Drive, Standard Drive, all those areas out there will remain, more rural residential, more bigger lots, because they're going to need a well and septic anyways. It's just we're trying to maximize the impact of what we do have kind of in our core that allows us to share. But like I said, as we go through these development, part of our review is where do you put snow storage? Like, where does the snow go? It doesn't just disappear. So a lot of this does get built in. It's just more subdivision by subdivision, not broad.
yeah, as an example, that street, you've got 3 houses here and 3 houses here. You back out of your house and I back out of mine, and we're both tail to tail. Now, where's the ambulance and where's the emergency guy go to get around us? That's my concern as I'm seeing all these pop up. I hear what you're saying. They already had it on the paper, on the books, already developed, but we have a threshold to look at that kind of thing. I would hope that, emergency services, because that's things that Anchorage has had, these little pockets, and now all of a sudden, nobody can get any emergency equipment in there.
So our road design standards, when we're looking at how big of cul-de-sac and everything, that is based on our design vehicle, which is a fire truck, because that's one of the biggest vehicles that's going to be there, or greater. They're about. So they do have sufficient radius, and generally when we have cul-de-sacs, the initial plow will kind of get plowed into the middle, and then they'll take it out as soon as they get the roads clear. With the parking restrictions during the winter, that kind of keeps some of the, I'm not going to say congestion, but some of the crampedness down. But with our setbacks, which require the 20-foot, that should allow for at least 2 cars to be in the driveway, potentially in the garage. But it's or so at least some in the garage, like. But at some point, part of this, the government isn't supposed to be dictating all of it. Some of it does have to fall on on the property owners. But
I just want to have conversations if we're talking about zoning.
Does this, you mentioned that the city, we're not giving up control because if this large lot gets subdivided, we'll have say in roads, but does that also apply to the Kenights lot? Because when we agreed to plow one of their roads for them, and because it's a private road, right? So then they'll take that over in however many years. So will we actually have say on the roads in that 160 acres?
The roads, we will not, we agreed to plow this current one in exchange for them to give an easement along the west side of their property for stormwater, because
Yep.
there is that issue in Inlet Woods for stormwater drainage.
Yeah, they've been doing great things in the woods, by the way. Thank you very much. They were cleaning out the gutters today.
I'll give them a gold star tomorrow. So we won't have control over the roads, but we will, we still, all the buildings will come to us. So like I said, they're not subdividing their lot. It's all going to be one huge parcel, and they're just going to have different buildings around. So as they develop it, we'll have some, we'll have some ability to weigh in on, are you compensating for the fact that a fire truck has to come in? And they are very cognizant. We've been talking with the people developing their buildings. They know that the emergency squad has to get in there, or the fire truck has to get in there. So they are already designing it in a way that's very similar to ours. But because they're privately held roads, we are not going to have like an installation agreement or anything like that, because we're not going to be the ones maintaining it. But that is part of the building development process as they put in a building permit, is to make sure it has reasonable access for emergency services and for snow removal, because we all know that unfortunately that four-letter S word is coming a lot sooner than we care to admit.
Clerk, can we call for the vote?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Petty,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ursley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kraus,
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Reveal.
Yes.
There are 6 yes votes.
Item G, unfinished business, we have none. Item H, new business. The first item is discussion, direction from Kenai City Council to explore the issues of tent camping within the city.
Sorry, Vice Chair Ursley. Shuffling papers around. So we did, I'll give you a quick backstory. I'm not going to read this entire memo because it's quite lengthy. But to set the stage, this is a lot of the same information that was given to council. But a quick summary, in early July 2025, both the city manager's office and the planning and zoning department received inquiries from quite a few different residents regarding activities on a parcel that was located on 3rd Street, so just west of the airport. That should be 3rd Avenue. I apologize. Reports indicated that tents, portable restrooms, and a dumpster had been placed on a vacant property. That had been cleared. There was a previously derelict house that had been, a tree had fallen on it, and so it was in pretty bad shape, so they torn it down and cleared the lot. But then all of this started showing up. Planning staff reviewed the parcel's ownership records and noticed that it had been recently transferred, so somebody had purchased it and torn down that house. We also conducted a site visit and confirmed the presence of several tents along the property's perimeter. We spoke with an individual on site who indicated the property was being used solely for private, non-commercial purposes, so it wasn't being rented out like a campground. It was one entity, and it was their members that were staying at the site. The site did appear orderly. We also researched the Kenai Municipal Code to determine the extent to which camping, and specifically tent camping in residential zones, is addressed. And while the code does include restrictions mostly related to recreational or RV use, there are limited references specific to tent camping. The current provisions that are in code are below. There's a couple in 13, Title 13, and a couple on 18, which refer to city lands. But in terms of Title 14, the planning and zoning, the only one we had were putting restrictions on recreational vehicles and their use. So based on these public inquiries, we talked with the city manager, who then informed me that there were more inquiries to his office. And talking with the council members, they wanted us to look at tent camping writ large citywide, and especially tent camping in residential zones. So the council recommended to our commission to dig a little deeper. If you do decide to want to look into it, direct me to come up with some recommendations and potentially schedule a work session, which will get addressed with another item of business here in a little bit, to start going through how we might modernize Title 14 or other parts of code to include putting guardrails on tent camping. Like I said, it's pretty sparse in code, and there's really nothing that says you cannot do it as long as sanitary facilities are present. So the fact that they did have portable toilets and they had sanitary areas with water and stuff like that, technically they met the intent of code, but it was a matter that a lot of the residents just didn't feel comfortable with, because this wasn't, Jimmy and Johnny popping a tent in the backyard and, being Boy Scouts or whatever like that. It was people they didn't know from out of town staying across the street from them or down the street from them. And it was just, we just realized that there weren't really any guardrails there. And if this commission were to suggest different recommendations, council would like to see what those are, but they didn't want to restrict us, so they just said, please look into it.
A couple of questions. Or covenants and restrictions reviewed for that neighborhood, if they have any? And also, was it the owner of the lot that was camping on the lot?
It was the owner of the lot, and the covenants and restrictions, as far as we could find any, there were none that precluded that in that area. It's also questionable legally. The city really can't enforce covenants and restrictions. That would be ultimately an HOA or some other group like it, a neighborhood group. But we just did realize that in areas where there are no covenants or restrictions, there's nothing else in code that guides people one way or the other.
Were there unruly conduct happening that were complaints from the neighbors, other than just the fact that their presence were there? Were they orderly and in proper conduct, or were they disorderly?
We received no complaints. I do not believe KPD received any complaints either. They were quiet. Like most people this year, they were down there just catching their fill of fish pretty expeditiously. But there wasn't, it wasn't like a big rowdy area. We didn't receive anything like that. It was just more of the fact that there were people in the neighborhood that were unknown for that temporary nature. That's what brought the concern from the local residents.
I could not live in a tent, but my father-in-law is a gold miner, and he can live in a wall tent year-round if he wanted to. I mean, it's got a nice wood stove in there and everything. So I would think that we do need some rules regarding tenting in rural residential areas.
Commissioner Revelle.
Thank you, through the chair. My curiosity is that if people say have family coming to town, and it kind of overwhelms the amount of bedrooms that they have, will this restrict the amount of people that can camp on your property while they're visiting and using your restroom and shower and all that kind of thing? Because I think that that's actually kind of a viable way to manage large families coming to town. If you have a residence on the property, I don't know that this would apply, or will it?
ultimately, that would be up to what the commission recommends. I've done some preliminary diving into this, just to look at what's around. For one, we don't even define what a tent is in code. So we're gonna need to, we may want to start there, but it could be length of time, it could be number. When do we define it as a campground? Like, there's a few different things, so we may want to start something as basic as what is a tent, what is a campground, and then build up from there to, we don't want to preclude people, like personally, if my mom comes to visit again, I'm putting her in a tent in the backyard. But I love my mother, but we don't want to necessarily say, no, you can't do this ever. But I think putting some sort of guardrails, whatever those are, may be appropriate. So ultimately, the recommendations from this commission, and we don't, like I said, we'll probably do a work session or maybe a few of them to get comfortable with what we want, and then we would recommend it to council to address.
So it's not actually that we're planning on doing restrictions, more definitions, right? And defining what those potentially offensive campgrounds or gatherings of people would look like. And in combination perhaps with RVs. What if my mother-in-law and father-in-law decide they want to come up and park their RV in my big spacious backyard for a couple of months during the summer, right? As long as, I don't know the name of the waste company, but there's a waste company that will come and pump your septic out of your tank and take care of your water and all that other stuff. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we can do this without really creating a ton of restrictions. I think we should be sensible.
I think that's a good way to define what it is. And while they did direct us more for tent camping, it was writ large. So if there's any modifications to RVs or somehow to make them align so they work together, I think it would be appropriate and within the context of what council asked the commission to do.
Being in real estate, I see people come into town all the time that they just want that small lot, that they can put a pole barn on and park their camper under and maybe hook up to water and sewer or put in a septic or well. I think that kind of sounds like what we're dealing with these particular people. They bought a lot probably very cheaply and can spend their summers here camping on their lot while they catch fish, and that's their idea of a good time. And we definitely don't want to keep people from enjoying their own properties, but I do think that in the city limits, I think there should be some management control there about being able to just reside on your lot in a tent.
So I think there's a difference between people using their own property. I mean, I think there should be maybe time limits on how long someone can reside in a tent, like, the kid that you don't want in your house or something. But I find the thing that really needs regulation is to prevent homeless shelters. That's what I don't want to see around here, is a homeless shelter that starts. So not necessarily on residential property, but within parks or in the woods behind the grocery store, all those kind of things. That's getting a little out of hand, and it's very scary when you have young grandchildren walking through town. So I'd like to see some good restrictions on that type of thing.
I fully appreciate, like, say, what you want to do with your property kind of thing, and I can fully understand if there was some kind of a catastrophic event, and now all of a sudden you're looking at rebuild, and, you could be in an RV, you could be in a tent, and who knows how long that might look like. So there's many scenarios that would present itself that why you might have a tent, and then like the Commissioner Kraus suggested, you have that pocket of folks that, yeah, it's cheap, it's affordable, let me throw up a tent. But I've driven through there, and like you say, that's where the guardrails come in, and 7 days is 7 days, and let's turn it back into a neighborhood and not a campground. And so it's not that we don't want to say you can't do this with your property, but how can we respectfully say that, we live here, you're just visiting kind of thing. We recognize it's still your property and you have some rights, but I would also, like you say, look at short term. So then you're going to get that crazy person that wants to come and throw events down here. We got a $12,000 lot down in Kenai. By golly, let's all head down there for the 4th of July weekend. And yeah, I'm going to charge you all to park here and do this and that, and then it's monetized. I mean, it's just a short distance away from that one crazy individual that takes it and runs with it. So I think it's a great idea that we have a work session and we flesh out some of these topics and ideas. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
I look at it more as a safety issue as well, because we probably all have heard of different people having tried to camp here through the winter and lost their lives from carbon monoxide detection because they covered their camper with a tarp or whatever. They didn't have airflow in and out, and it's definitely a huge safety concern.
And along the safety concern, if we do identify a lot of restrictions to place on whether it's privately owned property or tents on public lands, we need to be aware not to be increasing KPD's responsibilities.
If someone is breaking the law, it is our law enforcement officer's duty to rectify that. So if you have unlawfulness in our community, that's why we have paid police officers to keep our community safe. That's just 2 cents.
And I would just add that code enforcement can help with certain things, so they wouldn't have to respond to everything. If it is a public safety, life and safety, for sure. But just like we do for abandoned homes or homes with windows busted out, like code enforcement does take a lot of the initial steps. So it wouldn't all fall on KPD, but like I said, life and safety would be the difference.
Yeah, I think it's great starting with, like you say, a definition, and then from a definition to maybe a timeline expectation, whether it's 7 days or 30 days or 90 days for the season kind of thing. And then generators, I mean, they're certainly helpful when you're camping, but again, in a residential neighborhood, constantly can be quite annoying. And if you're going to fire up your chainsaw so you can all sit around and go kumbaya with s'mores, every night could be exhausting. So, I mean, there's both sides of the aisles that you can discuss on this, but I think it's great that we've kind of put some of those bumpers in place tonight.
Next, we have item H2, requesting inclusion of comprehensive plan project into FY 2027-2031 City of Kenai Capital Improvement Plan.
So we mentioned this before, but did put it into an action approval, but we can modify it if it's not quite to where you want it to be before we take any action, or the commission reserves the right to defer action on this should you want to completely change it or some modifications. But the current City of Kenai Comprehensive Plan, Imagine Kenai 2030, was adopted nearly 10 years ago, and we're actually almost about to hit that horizon year, I'm sorry to say. Development in the city in that intervening decade has largely followed the recommendations of the plan. Some exceptions were made through some ancillary planning projects, such as the working waterfront development and the rezoning area down there. Currently, the Parks and Rec Master Plan and the Airport Master Plan projects are underway, so they're going to have a lot of robust data for both of those sections. And some of those new planning efforts may have recommendations that are not currently reflected in the comprehensive plan as it stands now. And some requirements for state and federal funding have also changed over time through different presidential administrations. So I reached out to similarly sized municipalities like the City of Homer, did some digging. Some here in Alaska, some lower 48, just trying to get a good mix of what a cost for a comprehensive plan would be. I got a range. So those costs range from 200,000, which was kind of just comprehensive plan light. The city took on a lot of the public engagement. The consultants just basically wrote the report with some recommendations, all the way up to 650,000, which my eyes popped out of my head for a minute. But that also had additional scope tasks to include rewriting sections of their code that went with that comprehensive plan. So it was more like 2 contracts in one. And did reach out to the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and they have historically assisted the city, most cities, with comprehensive plan updates. So I was going to recommend requesting 250,000 as a starting point to talk about the capital improvement plan for the upcoming fiscal year 2027 to 2031 City of Kenai Capital Improvement Plan. Historically, we don't add a lot of stuff to that plan. That's more building renovations or airport projects or something large scale. These are usually one-off things. They're not something we build into the budget because it doesn't happen every year. So that's why I was going to request or ask for action approval to request 250,000. The ultimate number would be decided by council when they adopt the capital improvement plan, but I wanted to have a firm placeholder in there so that we could ask for this, because I think it is in the best interest of the city to take the Parks Master Plan, the Airport Master Plan, and then update our sections, which is essentially everything else, to move us forward into a new era, because things are changing, and if that pipeline does go through, Kenai is going to look a little bit different, good, bad, or otherwise, but hopefully good. And we just want to be on the front end of that so that we're ready up front instead of scrambling at the end to, fit a square peg into a round hole kind of situation.
Excuse me, through the chair, Director, I believe that we need to have a motion to move it and a second for an action approval. Please correct me if I'm incorrect. I think it would behoove us to have a motion to move by in a second, just on an air of caution, if anything.
Okay, so we need to ask if
Motion to recommend.
a motion into FY 2027-2031 City of Kenai Capital Improvement Plan. Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to request the inclusion of the comprehensive plan project for FY 2027, 31 City of Kenai Capital Improvement Plan.
I will second.
Commissioner Revere.
Thank you.
I apologize for jumping the gun, but I already kind of gave you the background, so now we can get back, I guess, to commission deliberation, just a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I would like to ask staff if this is connected, and this is, I believe that it's necessary in order for the city to qualify for some grant opportunities. If you don't have current updated comprehensive plans, some federal and state grants disallow you from participating. Is that my understanding, sir?
Yes, and I'll say, yeah. Having projects in plans, even if they're not the specific phase you're going after, but recognizing that you do need to extend water and sewer into certain neighborhoods or something like that, having those outlined in a plan is always advantageous, especially with a lot of those state and federal grants. Some, when you get to actual phasing or when you get to the actual specific project, I'm just going to make this up. This is not an actual project, but let's just say, because there's already water and sewer along 4th Avenue between Forest and Evergreen. But let's just say there wasn't, and that was, we identified that as a project. improving that would probably take about 10, 15 years. So it would be appropriate to put something like that in the comprehensive plan. But when you're phasing it out and you're saying we're going from Forest to Gill and then Gill to the next, those would go in the capital improvement plan. So you could still tell the funding agency, yes, it's in a plan, but it aligns with this goal, which is the broader one that's in the comprehensive plan. So it's a way for us to say, broad brush, this is what we want. And then as funding becomes available, that's when we start drilling down and getting it into a bite-sized piece that we can handle.
Commissioner Revere.
Through the chair, Director Buettner, as Commissioner Petty also asked about federal funding, will this bring traffic safety to the forefront as far as curbs and gutters and watershed and all of those things, being able to manage it, more stop signs, big turnaround areas for buses and RVs and people that need to be able to move about the area? Could we get federal funding for that as well?
Yes, we could go scoping stuff like that. So comprehensive plan is going to look at a lot of different things, not just zoning and land use. It's going to look at parks and recreation. It's going to look at transportation, and not just the airport, but road transportation, pedestrian infrastructure and transportation. So yes, it can help with that. Some other safety efforts that have happened, like the borough just did a Safe Streets for All plan. So we could, a lot of those can get included and wrapped into the comprehensive plan. We kind of don't reinvent the wheel. We say, hey, we support this plan and we want to do X, Y, and Z specifically within the city that might not be captured in that plan. So we take advantage of a lot of different resources, but yes, we want to make it robust and it would touch on many different aspects of life in Kenai. Some is zoning, and directly plan related, and some is more how do we improve what we have, the infrastructure. That might fall more under like public works, but we still all work together to that common goal.
Sounds like money well spent.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Ursley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kraus,
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Reveal,
Yes.
Commissioner Petty.
Yes.
There are 6 yes votes.
Next, we have item H3, information on resolution number 2025-61, authorizing participation in the current solicitation of the Community Development Block Grant. Director Buettner, can we have your report, please?
Sure, I'll keep this pretty brief. So this is just more information, but at the last council meeting, the council had allowed or authorized the city manager to put in an application for the Community Development Block Grant, which is federal funding, but it passes through the state. This particular project would be to extend water and sewer to the new KPHI developments along 6th Street with low to moderate income and senior housing, and those are 2 focus areas for the specific grant. They cannot apply it by themselves. It has to be a municipality or a borough that is the applicant. So we're partnering with them. They're the ones providing the match with a lot of the funding they've already leveraged from different funding sources. We're just essentially a pass-through agency, but they can request up to $850,000, which could go a long way for getting to a lot of this infrastructure if awarded. And it also would benefit the city because that large tract to the north that we discussed earlier would then be stubbed out with water and sewer that's already under readout, already there, basically ready to plug and play. So the city council was supportive. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because we have been working on a lot of different things up there, and I just felt it appropriate as development goes to keep you guys informed. So that's.
Next, we have H4, action and approval scheduling end-of-year meetings and work session. Is there a motion to amend the November and December meeting schedule?
I'd like to make I'd like to make a motion to approve action item selecting the end of the year meetings and work sessions.
Second.
Director Buettner, can we have the staff report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair Ersley. So the meeting calendar for our commission includes the following dates: the November 12th and 26th, and December 10th and 24th. The meetings on November 26th and December 24th are immediately before Thanksgiving and Christmas respectively. I would think that you guys might want to be with your family, so I did recommend canceling the November 26th and December 24th meetings. We put the notice out and be done with that. And also with the work session, with tent camping, setting a date, it doesn't have to necessarily fall. I suggested putting a work session before each of those meetings just to start the discussion, knowing that it'll probably bleed into the new year. But ultimately, if you guys would like to push that into a later time, that ultimately is up to you guys. But potentially a quick work session before the November 12th and December 10th meetings, again, to start that conversation. And then if there is no business for the business meeting would be canceled, but you guys would know well ahead of time.
I agree. I think putting the work sessions before the two meetings is probably the best way to go.
So would that mean if the meeting is canceled, would the work session be pushed to a later time?
If we had enough time to publicly notice and meet those requirements, we could reschedule the work session to a later time that day.
Yeah.
But if there's no business, generally, most things before this body require a public hearing. So if we know long enough ahead that there's not going to be like a CUP application or something like that, we could push it. But I think for now, we have to assume that there will be business. So if we were to schedule one, it may be prudent to either do 5:30 or 6. And then we would adjourn from that for a little bit, have a little break, and then come to our business meeting.
Can you write in a caveat that if there is no work before the commission for planning and zoning, that the work session would be canceled?
You could amend, if you want to amend the approval.
So I would like to make a motion that we cancel the November 26th and December the 24th. And if there is no work before this body on the two other meetings in November and December, that the preceding work sessions would be canceled. May we have a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Stacy. Thank you.
I feel like we should have the work session regardless. 'Cause we have to do some work sometime.
My thought is the same, as if we at least have a brief conversation or, like say, discuss the topic. Council is waiting to hear on our thoughts and ideas, so the longer we procrastinate, and this is a great opportunity if we don't have business, that we can actually dig deep into it and possibly get it done and passed on to council, but that's just my thought.
I withdraw my motion. If it's concurred with the second.
Second.
I concur. I'd like to make a motion that we cancel the November 26th meeting and December 24th meeting and schedule a work session for 5:30 PM on November 12th. That's it.
Is it possible to schedule it for 6 or 6:10?
Microphone, please.
I'll amend my start time for the session to 6 PM.
So to clarify, just make sure it's on the record, so we know exactly what we're voting for. Motion on the floor is to cancel the November 26th and December 24th Planning and Zoning regularly scheduled meetings, and to schedule a work session at 6 PM on November 12th, 2025.
Yes, thank you.
I'll second that.
I request unanimous consent if there's no objections.
No objections to unanimous consent. The amended schedule is approved. Moving on to item I, reports. Director Buettner, may we have your report, please?
I just want to say thank you for bearing with me. Did a lot of talking tonight, but in the respect everyone's time, that's no major report right now.
Thank you for everybody's time and dedication to planning and zoning. Commissioner Fikes, may we have your Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Report, please?
Yes. We met on October 13th. We had a couple items, a conditional use permit to construct a bridge within the 50-foot habitat protection district of the Storiski Creek area. It was discussed and approved. And then we had a utility easement vacation. And there was some input from McLean Consulting, and that request was to vacate a 20-foot wide utility easement near the midpoint of a west lot line. And that was in the Sterling area, Irwin subdivision. And that one was discussed and approved. And then we had another building setback encroachment permit. And that one was not heard. That was actually postponed due to the applicant having an incomplete packet. And so that'll be brought back around at a later date. And then we had a public hearing legislative matter for a section line easement vacation. And that was in the Diamond Ridge area, and that was also approved. And that brought us to another right-of-way vacation, this time in the Nikiski area. And that was no contest, no issue, and that was approved. And then we had a street naming resolution, and this was the Salamatoff area. And so we renamed a private road to Roots Loop, Roots Loop. And that was the end of our session.
Councilmember Askin, may we have your report, please?
Thank you, Chair Yearsley. So I got 3 meetings to cover. September 17th, we accepted a grant from the state of Alaska for the purchase of library materials. And we also accepted a grant from Rasmussen for the Kenai Bronze Bear Family Sculpture Project at the airport, and I think that was like $15,000. The October 1st meeting, we had a, there wasn't a lot of business that night. We directed the Planning and Zoning Commission to explore the issue of tent camping. We also repealed the Kenai Municipal Code that was in the consent agenda so that employees could also bid on items that were for sale, city items that were for sale in auction. And we transferred a beverage dispensary license to KJB Investments, Skeets Dive Bar. That was in Kenai, and accepting the donation from Hillcorp for the area-wide senior Thanksgiving dinner. Also, the Kenai Peninsula Soccer Club donated $55,000 to build a pavilion at the soccer fields just north of Kenai. And then on the 15th of October, we swore in officials. As everybody probably knows, Henry Nagstad is the new mayor, and I retained my seat, and Bridget Greamy will be joining us on the council. And then, what else did we do? Well, we authorized a contract extension for employee health care. After considerable negotiation, we actually only had a 4% increase in our health insurance for the city, and typically the increase every year is at least 10. So because they had lower claims and some other factors, they were able to keep that down. And then we also authorized participation in the solicitation for the block grant that Director Buettner just talked about. And we declared with the election of Mayor Nagstad, we have a seat available on the city council, and I believe they'll be opening that for application, and we'll be appointing that position. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, Skeets Dive Bar, is that the Paradosos building?
No, I think it's the former Bow Bar.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Are there any remote attendees wishing to speak?
There is nobody online.
Our next meeting is scheduled for November 12th. Is there anyone planning to be absent or attending remotely? Commissioner Reveal.
I think this was a very productive meeting, and I feel that we're really moving forward with a lot of good stuff. Thank you.
Commissioner Woodard.
I agree with that. And I'll be gone in between meetings, but I'll be back.
Commissioner Kraus.
I'd just like to thank everyone for their time. I appreciate everyone for being here.
Commissioner Petty.
Thank you. It was a very productive meeting. I look forward to seeing everyone sometimes between now and then and November the 12th.
Commissioner Fikes.
Happy Halloween.
We have no pending items, and seeing no further business before this body, we are adjourned at 8:38.